European leaders debate tax evasion today. Will that mean more pressure on Switzerland to open up its banking industry? Microsoft wants to own your living room. It says the Xbox can handle games, live television, movies and music. Hello and welcome you with World Business Report. I'm Sally Bundock. Also in the programme, Sony shares are soaring on reports the company's board will discuss selling its entertainment division. We will have the details. But first, the European Union begins its leadership summit today. Top of the agenda, tax evasion. The EU believes up to €1 trillion are being lost every year to tax havens, one of them non-EU member Switzerland, which is still clinging to its long tradition of banking secrecy. But for how much longer can Switzerland resist the pressure from Brussels? From Bern, Imogen Folks has more.
Switzerland is a proud country, fiercely independent and sometimes slow to change. The Swiss have their own special ways of doing things. One of them is banking secrecy. But that's one tradition, Switzerland's neighbours say, that has to stop. The European Parliament believes €1 trillion a year in unpaid tax is vanishing, some at least into Swiss banks.
Let's put that into some perspective. €1 trillion is nearly double the 2012 combined annual budget deficit of all member states.
The European Parliament wants Switzerland to agree to the automatic exchange of banking information, meaning Europe's tax authorities can find out if their citizens have money in Swiss accounts. Non-EU member Switzerland has been told it must comply. In the Swiss Parliament, there's dismay and division. Should Switzerland give in to Europe's demands, a move that would be completely out of character? Or should the Swiss follow their long tradition of saying no to outside interference?
We have to defend our position. No to automatic exchange of information. The rest of them will have to accept this position. They can do what they like among themselves, but not with us.
I suppose Switzerland could try to resist, pretend we're alone up in the mountains like Heidi, but it just wouldn't be practical.
It's beginning to look as if being practical will win out over tradition and independence. Switzerland may be a wealthy country, but much of its wealth depends on doing business with Europe. So if Europe wants Swiss banks to change the way they do business, Switzerland may have to give in. There's a growing realisation here that the days of banking secrecy are numbered. Imogen Folks, BBC News, Bern.
Well, let's stay on the subject of tax. And as you can see behind me, this is the chief executive of Apple. Next to his chief financial officer, this is Tim Cook, of course, who faced some very tough questions in Washington yesterday over his company's tax policy. In particular, US lawmakers wanted to know about a scheme where Apple channels most of its overseas sales through 3 companies incorporated in Ireland, but not liable to pay tax anywhere. That helped reduce Apple's tax bill by $9 billion last year, according to a Senate report. But Mr. Cook stood by his firm's actions.
We pay all the taxes we owe, every single dollar. We not only comply with the laws, but we comply with the spirit of the laws. We don't depend on tax gimmicks.
Now, Apple executives want the public to focus on the U.S. taxes the company has paid. But the real issue is the billions in taxes that it has not paid, thanks to offshore tax strategies whose purpose is tax avoidance, pure and simple.
Now onto other corporate news. Shares in Sony have been soaring this morning in Tokyo. They're trading at their highest level in around 2 years. The excitement has been caused by a report saying Sony might be considering a proposal to sell part of its successful entertainment business. Let's go to Rico Hizon, who's at our Asia Business Hub in Singapore. Nice to see you, Rico.
Sally.
And this follows, doesn't it, a letter from one of the key shareholders to Sony suggesting this idea. So tell us more.
That's right. It's all about a suggestion from one of the influential hedge managers, Sally, David Loeb. And he spoke with the CEO of Sony, Kazuo Hirai. That's why all eyes right now will be on Sony's CEO. He has a press conference in about 90 minutes' time in Tokyo to discuss his plan to revive profitability in the electronics giant. And basically, there's speculation that this talk of spinning off the entertainment business could be part of his agenda. You know, Sally, all this talk about selling the entertainment and movie business all started when David Loeb said that he was pushing that Sony to sell a fifth of its profitable business. Loeb's hedge fund, Third Point, has built up quite a large stake in Sony, worth more than $1 billion, making it the Japanese group's biggest shareholder. So we'll have to wait and see what comes out from this press conference of the CEO, Mr. Hirai, which will take place very soon. Sally.
And while we're talking about big exporters in Japan, they had some trade figures out today, which were a bit disappointing, weren't they?
Yep, the trade deficit expanded a worse than expected 70%, Sally, to $8.6 billion in April from last year. And this is due to the rising costs of imports like oil. And the fresh numbers have given us an insight in how the falling yen has been affecting the economy. So far, it's been a positive thing for exporters because their goods are cheaper for people to buy. But not all businesses are happy, and that's because the falling yen is driving up the cost of many imports like power. Also, an important meeting took place today with the Bank of Japan deciding to keep monetary policy on hold. They said that the recent data shows that the economy is indeed picking up as demand recovers in other countries, and demand at home remains very resilient. Sally.
All right, thank you very much indeed, Rico in Singapore. Well, for hardcore gamers, they had to wait 8 years. Microsoft did go ahead, though. It unveiled its latest computer games console, the Xbox One. It'll go on sale later this year, and Microsoft says it is an all-in-one system, offering games, live television, movies, and music. It's an important launch for Microsoft. Last year, its games division accounted for almost $10 billion worth of sales. The BBC spoke to the head of Microsoft's Xbox business, Don Matrick. He says computer games will be just one part of the machine's appeal.
And I do think people are going to love some of the innovation, things like Skype, the ability to move between all classes of content instantly, just like doing a channel change, and the ability to do two things at once and have those things have context through smart glass and incorporate with your mobile devices, with your tablets. We're really going to make your living room a premium place to have fun, to socialize, to experience all sorts of new things.
Now let's have a look at some other business stories. The International Monetary Fund is due to release a report on the state of the British economy today. It follows a week of meetings between IMF officials and representatives from the government and Bank of England. According to a report in today's Times, the IMF will urge the government to sell its stakes in Lloyds and Royal Bank of Scotland despite potential losses for the taxpayer. Shares in the world's biggest operator of cruise ships, that's Carnival, fell 4% in New York after the company cut its forecast for profits this year. Carnival is struggling to recover from a string of mishaps. The most recent was in February when passengers on the Carnival Triumph endured grim conditions after the ship lost power and was adrift in the Gulf of Mexico for 5 days. Shareholders in JP Morgan Chase voted in favour of keeping Jamie Dimon in the roles of chief executive and chairman. There had been calls for him to give up one of the two posts, particularly after a rogue trading scandal in London cost the bank more than $6 billion last year. But Mr. Dimon's supporters pointed to the company's record profits and strong share performance. We'll talk about that in more detail in the paper review, because as you can imagine, that vote, which was closely watched, the shareholder decision, is in today's newspapers about Jamie Dimon's future. Markets in Asia, Japan up strongly despite the trade numbers from Japan authorities. But the Bank of Japan policy meeting, that continuing, is keeping the yen pretty weak versus most major currencies, and the US closed up higher. I'll see you soon for a look at the papers.